Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be going over 14 of my top tips for homeschooling a lot of kids and doing it well. Tip number 1 is get up and get yourself ready before the children so that you can have an business persona. Now, let me explain. This is going to mean a different thing to different women. So I want you to get as dressed as you need to, the makeup that you need, the jewelry that you need to feel like you mean business, because our kids can tell. This is really important. If you are wearing sweats with holes in them and you haven't washed your hair in 4 days, and you would be embarrassed if somebody that you know showed up unannounced at your house. If that is how you feel, your kids are going to pick up on that, and they're going to pick up on your lack of confidence, and they're not going to listen to you nearly as well as they would if you have yourself pulled together to the point where you are coming across differently to them. So this is going to mean different things to different moms. Some moms, you can put on, jeans and a nicer t-shirt, pull your hair back in a ponytail, and you feel like totally ready to go. And that's great. Some moms, it's going to take a little bit more. For me personally, I have to put on a cute outfit. I usually put on some earrings. I make sure that my hair looks good to me. So, that could mean down and curled like it is today. That could mean up in a high ponytail. But I need to feel, I need to get my hair to the point where I would be, happy if anybody saw it that way, not embarrassed. So for me, and a little bit of makeup. So I have, like a 5-minute makeup routine that I'll do every single morning, unless I'm sick, then I don't do it because I'm in bed. But this really helps me set the tone for my own attitude and my own demeanor towards my kids. And my kids know the difference. If there is ever a day where I don't get dressed to my normal standard, my kids know it, and they misbehave a lot more because they think that they can get away with more. So whatever standard that is for you, you need to feel pulled together. So whatever that means for you, figure it out. Figure out what makes you, when you see yourself in the mirror, you're like, yep, that's it. You're going to do a better job. Trust me on this. If you're skeptical, just give it a week. Try it out and see what you think. Okay. Tip number 2, use bedtimes and meal times wisely. So it was probably 10 years ago when a homeschool mom friend of mine mentioned that they were getting so much read aloud work done. And, she had a lot of kids and they had a busy schedule. And so I asked her, I was like, well, how on earth are you fitting all of this time in? Because they were getting through, like a full chapter book, maybe like every 2 weeks. And so I said, how are you getting so much read aloud time? I don't understand. And she said, well, we read during breakfast and lunch for 30 minutes each time, every single day. And I said, well, okay, well, that sounds great. But then when do you eat? Like, how do you eat and read at the same time? And she said, oh, well, I make my food first and I eat it right before we all sit down. And so then, for the whole of breakfast and the whole of lunch, I can just read. And that made so much sense to me, but it had never occurred to me to do that. So in our home, we use breakfast to do our Christian studies, which is one of our sections in our curriculum is Christian studies. And we spend a good solid 30 minutes reading the proverb of the day, working on catechism memorization, going through the Christian studies unit for the school curriculum, and then also doing some scripture memory as well. So we use that time wisely. During lunch, my husband actually blesses me he works from home, and so he comes into the house so my husband uses the lunch hour to work on science with the kids, and I work on Christian studies. So that's 2 of our subjects that are completely taken care of during mealtime. So it's kind of, doubling up, doing double time during a natural break in the day. Now, my husband also I've got a good one, ladies. My husband also takes care of bedtime for our younger children that are 8 and under. And so he puts them to bed. Now he will grab the 10-year-old and the 12-year-old and they go upstairs and he does read aloud with them that is not related to the curriculum. So right now he's reading Lord of the Rings with them. He's done Chronicles of Narnia, like whatever he wants to do basically with them. And so he'll read to them for, sometimes it's just 5 to 10 minutes and sometimes it's 30. But he uses that time before bed and he reads to them. It doesn't happen every single night of the week, but it generally happens more often than it doesn't. So he's using that time as well. Okay, tip number 3 is to get your children started on math in the morning while you're cooking breakfast or while you're, for me, I need to have 1 or 2 cups of coffee. Like I'm kind of a slow starter, so it takes me a little bit of time before I'm like, ready to go. That's my clock. So while I'm doing that, while I'm drinking my coffee or while I'm preparing breakfast, I have my kids that might need some help. So that would be my 5th grader, my 3rd grader, and my 2nd grader. I have all of them working on their math. And I use school time to explain any concepts that they might have trouble with. So then the next day they can sit down and pretty much work independently. But if they need me to come over and explain something, I can do that. But that actually cuts down, we're able to go to the school table after breakfast and I can, make sure that they don't need any extra help. I can explain any new concepts, but they're not having to spend that, 30 to 45 minutes working on the math. So they're doing the problems, they're doing the work, informally. They're sitting around the kitchen while I'm, still able to do household stuff. So I would suggest giving that a shot. It might take a little bit of practice to figure out exactly how to work it so that you're explaining the right concepts the day before, but it's worth doing because it seems to help us get a jump on the other stuff. Okay, tip number 4 is to have a simple breakfast and lunch menu. Save things like pancakes and French toast and, baked egg casseroles and things like that. Save that for the weekends and do the quick and easy stuff. So basically in our house we do oatmeal twice a week and I put some canned fruit that is canned in juice. So we have peaches and pears that are canned in fruit juice. So it's not any added sugar. I add that to the oatmeal and we'll have that with chicken sausage and a glass of milk for breakfast twice a week. And then 2 other days of the week we will have eggs and toast and milk. And then there's some happy background noise right now. And then the 5th day of the week, usually I'll pick up something fun from the store, like pumpkin bread or, I might have made something the night before, but it is still a quicker, I'm not baking muffins. I'm not, making pancakes or anything like that. So it's quick. For lunches, like I said, my husband actually does lunch now, and he usually does like quesadillas, grilled cheese, leftovers. Before when I did it, it was like PB&J and quesadillas and grilled cheese. It's just the easy stuff. Like you're not cooking a meal. Hi. Can you just wave and then go in the other room, please? Say hi. Hi. So if you're keeping breakfast and lunch simple, then you're not spending a whole lot of extra time. Another option that you could do if you prefer a more elaborate breakfast or lunch is you could make things the evening before, prep things so that you just have to pop it in the oven or something like that. Okay, tip number 5 is to have all of your children doing the same subjects at the same time. Now, let me offer this caveat that I'm talking here about my 12-year-old and under. My high school girls are, they have a lot of online classes and they work independently. They don't really need me so much. Like they'll come and ask me questions, but they don't need me to teach to them. So this is really for my 12-year-old, 10-year-old, my 7th grader, my 5th grader, 3rd, 2nd, preschool. So when my 7th grader does Latin pretty much independently. He does a streaming class and he'll come and get me if he needs me. But for my 5th grader, he still really needs me nearby. So when I'm doing Latin with him, I'm also doing Latin with the 3rd and the 2nd grader. So we're all kind of like in Latin mode at this table that I'm sitting at right here. This is our school table. You know, so I'll have my laptop and I'll play the recording for anybody who needs it. And then they have their little Latin books and they're all here right around me so that, you know, Mom, I need help. Mom, I need help. I can, you know, help everybody.
I love you, Mom.
I love you too. Bye-bye. So my brain is in Latin mode. I don't have one child asking me about Latin, another asking me for a spelling test, another asking me about long division. Like, we're all focused on Latin. And then after that, we'll work on, I'll be doing composition with my 5th grader. And while I'm doing composition with him, if I have any writing exercises for my younger students, I'll have them do that, or I'll have them practice their cursive handwriting. You know, but it's still all kind of grouped together like that. And that's how we handle the mornings. It's a lot of grouping together. When my 5th and 7th grader need a spelling test, I have them do spelling at the same time. And then when they're working on grammar, we're working on grammar all together so that my brain isn't being pulled in a bunch of different directions. It just works a lot more efficiently. And then another benefit of that is if my 7th grader is waiting to ask me a question and my 2nd grader is like, oh, what's a verb again? My 7th grader can actually be like, hey, a verb is an action word. It's like jump or run. You know, so if we're all in the same mode on the same subject, I don't have to be everything for everyone. The 7th grader knows that I can help him quicker if he lets the 2nd grader know what a verb is. So it all kind of works interdependently in that way. Now, that doesn't mean that my 7th grader is the teacher. He's just answering an easy question that he's able to answer, and then that actually helps to reinforce to him what is a verb. Because when you have to explain something to someone, it cements the information in your own mind. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, tip number 6. Sorry about the noise in the background. Tip number 6 is to get all of the hard stuff done in the morning. Okay, so for us in our house, that is math, Latin, and composition. Those are the 3 biggies. We do Christian studies during breakfast, so I'm not really counting that in that 3, but you know, that is our most important part of the day, is the Christian studies. So we always have breakfast, we always do Christian studies. But the math, the Latin, and the composition are the 3 things that, as long as I get those done, we're winning. So it used to be back when, you know, 10 years ago, if we got Bible done and if we got math done, I was like, that's good enough. It really wasn't good enough. It's good enough in a season, like if you just had a baby, it's good enough for 3 months, but it's not good enough in the long run. Like, you need to be doing more than that. So in our house now, the standard is math, composition, and Latin. And so we really strive to get that done before lunchtime. If we can't get it done before lunchtime, then I will let my husband know, hey, so-and-so is still working on this in composition. Please make sure that he has it done by 1 o'clock. And so we kind of tag team a little bit in that way. But you know, your brain is freshest in the morning. And so that's when I want them working on the hardest stuff. And it also makes sure that the stuff that I might be wanting to put off, or they might be wanting to put off, it gets prioritized so it gets done. Okay, so our afternoon time is for, I don't know if you can hear that. Somebody's like banging on the floor upstairs. The afternoon time is when we do our literature, read alouds that we have, history, and classical studies. So it's a lot more of the verbal side of the brain, the language side of the brain. I'll have to do a separate video on how I handle teaching literature and classical studies. I've come up with a method of doing it this year that I really like, that makes sure that the children are really utilizing those workbooks that we have to the greatest of their ability, but also doubling up and making sure that they are getting other good writing skills out of that, you know, copying. Basically what I do is I'll ask the question, I'll have the student answer the question to the best of their ability, and if I need to cue them a little bit, well, what about his dog? What happened with his dog? I'll do that to try and get the full answer out of them. And then what I will do is I will take the answer from the teacher's guide and I will write it on the board in cursive with proper capitalization and punctuation, so that they are seeing a really well thought out answer. Basically all of the information that they just said, but in a concise, beautiful answer. And they're copying that, they're practicing their punctuation, and they're, it's good sentence structure. So I feel like it really doubles up. We're not just answering questions here. They're not just writing for the sake of writing, but they're mimicking good writing. So that's how I do classical studies and literature, and we do that in the afternoon, and then there's the read aloud time. Now I have actually started, I didn't even put this in my outline, this is an extra tip. I've actually started, instead of me reading the books to them, we use Audible, and so I will play a chapter and I will make them follow along, and I'm sitting there with them, like I'm doing this with them. We are following along together. I just found that my jaw hurt when I have to do read alouds for 3 or 4 kids. That is a lot of talking, and I'm not used to that, and my throat would hurt, and it was just unpleasant. And so, so now we use Audible, and I sit with them and we follow along, and it's been working really, really well. I've been doing that for over a year now, and that is a lifesaver. Okay, so tip number 8 is to get dad involved if at all possible. Now, I know that this isn't going to be possible for everybody, but for my first 15 years or so of homeschooling, my husband was always saying, let me know if I can help. Let me know what I can do. And I was always like, no, I've got it. I'm Superwoman here. I don't need your help. It's actually really nice to have my husband's help. When I gave him complete ownership over one of the subjects, that is what really, I showed him the teacher's manual, I showed him the schedule, and I just handed him the books, and he does it now, and he stays on schedule, and it's wonderful, and he probably does a better job teaching it than I would. He's really, really great at it, and the kids love spending that time with him. And so if there's anything, even if it is just, reading aloud to them, if there's anything that you can hand off, if your husband is really good at math, have him help the kids with math. He doesn't have to necessarily be there while they're doing all their questions, but after you check their work, if they get, if you're wrong, you can say, hey, would you mind going over this concept with so-and-so, at the end of the night? And it kind of needs to be scheduled, though. That's the one thing that I have found, because he does it during lunchtime. He doesn't have to remember. It's just part of his week. So if you're going to have your husband involved, I would say, have there be 15 to 20 minutes after dinner where that's just what he does. But it really is nice and it's helpful if you can get dad involved in some way. Number 9 is controversial. It's not to me, but it might be to you. And that is this: limit outside activities. You don't have to be doing everything. It is called homeschool. It's not called van school. So many homeschool moms get burnt out and feel like they can't get anything done for the simple reason that they're never at home. Your kids do not need to be in a bunch of different sports. They don't, honestly, okay, this probably is controversial. They don't need to be in one sport. Your kids don't need sports. What they need is a good education. And what they need is a mother who is not about to lose her ever-loving mind. And when mom is constantly at home, she doesn't have time to do laundry, the house is a disaster, you're eating takeout every single night, mom is not going to be as good as she could be. She's just not. So we have always been very careful about limiting activities. I have never had the mindset that my children need to be in sports. We do swim team, not every year though. We do it when it's convenient for us. We'll put the kids in swim team. We had a several year stint where the children did martial arts, and that was helpful and beneficial. But I guess we go for sports where everybody can participate at the same time. I'm not taking 3 different kids to 3 different soccer practices and then being at the soccer field all day, every Saturday. I'm not doing that. I don't have time for that. That's not benefiting my kids. My kids are not going to be professional soccer players. They're just not. Like, even if they had amazing talent, which we'll never know because we haven't done soccer in 18 years, I think. But even if they had that talent, I'm not, like, that's just not the life that we're going for. So this is controversial. You'll have to figure out what it means in your own home, what is right for you. But if you are feeling pulled in a million different directions, I would encourage you to take a good hard look at the extracurriculars and cut them back. You don't have to do them. Our children get plenty of social interaction at church, at all of the church functions that we do. During the summer, we do a lot more things. There's my clock again. During the summer, we actually take some of the kids up because the older people at our church play dominoes every Monday afternoon. I think it's Monday afternoons. And it's all of the older people. And my kids love going and playing dominoes because they're cutthroat there. And they have so much fun because it's super competitive. They're getting plenty of time at the different youth functions. You know, they go to Bible studies and they do, you know, different youth game nights and things like that. And also, they live in a household of 12. So we have a lot of neighbors that they interact with, you know, frequently, usually daily. So the kids are getting plenty of social interaction. You don't really need to use that as an excuse to drive yourself crazy, basically. So I know that it's controversial. Just give it some thought. One other thing that I wanted to say about outside activities, I have found that it is easier on the homeschool day if you do evening activities. If activities are something that you definitely want to have in your life, I have found that if you do them in the evening, you can get your school done during the day. If you're taking kids, you know, a lot of different places will have homeschool martial arts, homeschool swim team. And these time periods, though, are right in the middle of the homeschool day. Like, it breaks things up and it makes it really hard to keep a consistent school schedule. I found that it really works a lot better for the school schedule if you do them in the evening. So that's when we choose to do our activities. Because it just, you know, and I hate when things interfere with family dinner time. So we still keep those limited because the majority of the days, everybody needs to be here for dinner. But it does work out better for the homeschool day if the activities are in the evening. Number 10, this one seems obvious, but this was a mistake that I made myself, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Do not forget to check your children's work. Do not just assume that because they get the worksheet done, that they are getting things right. This is especially important in math and in Latin, but I mean, it is important in everything. Check your children's work. Now, if you've got a million kids like I do, and you've gotten a little bit behind in checking work like I sometimes do, you can always hand the teacher's guide to one of your trusted older kids and say, hey, can you do me a favor and check this kid's work so that I can check your work? And so that way you can get through a bunch of stuff quickly. Do not do it don't do it. If you have two kids that are really, really buddy-buddy and they're always in cahoots together, do not give one of those kids the other kid's work, if you know what I mean. Like, take family relationships into account when you're choosing who grades kids' work. This is also something that you could get dad involved with. This is an easy thing that dad could help out with. Number 11, and this is not popular, but I had to do this for many, 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 many years. Actually, I did this for more years than I haven't done this. I'm not doing it right now, but I might have to readopt it, is to consider schooling year-round. Consider not taking a summer break. Now, this gives you a little bit more freedom to, you know, not be quite so rigid all the time, but you have to be self-disciplined with this. You can't get too loosey-goosey or you'll end up behind anyway. But this is especially helpful if you have had, you know, a winter of illness where it seems like people are always sick. This is helpful, you know, if you've just had a baby or if you've had a particularly difficult pregnancy and it's really hard for you to get the schoolwork done. Just school through the summer. You don't have to take that time off. Of course, you can still take 1 or 2 weeks for vacation, but then when you get back, get back to the work. And so that will help you not get behind, or it might even help you get a little bit ahead, which gives you a buffer. So if you are having trouble checking all of the boxes and you feel like you're always behind, I would strongly suggest schooling all year round. It also helps the kids a little bit because once they get into that routine, taking a 3-month break kind of breaks that up a little bit, and it makes it harder to get started. So when the kids are just doing, year-round school, we're not doing it right now. We are doing a summer break, but I would pick it up in a heartbeat if we ever got behind. Number 12, you need to hold yourself to a high standard, and then you can hold your children to a high standard. Too many times I've seen parents, including myself, who expect their children to be super self-disciplined, have excellent study habits, wake up early, happy with a smile, ready to get to work, but mom herself is not displaying any of this self-discipline. So if you want your children to value studies, then your children need to see their mother valuing the studies, which means reading along as much as possible. If you can't read all of the books, then at least stay ahead by reading through the teacher's guide chapters that you'll be discussing with your kids. They need to see mom being a good student as well. They need to see mom waking up happy, ready to go with a smile on her face, not frowning and, acting like homeschooling is the worst thing that's ever happened to her. So what I'm trying to say is, mom, you set the tone in the school. If you want your children to be diligent students, you need to be a diligent homeschool mom because they're taking their cues from you. Number 13, keep your home reasonably clean and neat. You will be able to think so much more clearly. You'll be able to execute so much more clearly. Your children will be able to think and execute more clearly if you're in a neat space. Now, that doesn't mean that everything has to be surgically clean. It just means it needs to be neat. And the wonderful thing about homeschooling is that your children are here to help you clean up. The bad thing about homeschooling is your children are here to help you mess up. So what I like to do is just several times throughout the day, call a timeout, everybody stop, let's pick up this room, or let's go clean up the kitchen. Everybody works together. We all know mom wants to keep the house clean. Let's just do it. So keeping the house clean and neat. Nobody, okay, think about it this way. If you could study in the most beautiful library in the world, you could choose between that and you could choose between your messy bedroom. Which one would you choose? I know where I'm going to choose to study. It's going to be the beautiful space. So just think about that in terms of keeping the house clean. Like, keep your space beautiful. This does not take a lot of money. Just keep it clean and picked up. Like, it's going to help, I promise. Okay, my last homeschool tip for moms with many students is to mimic the tortoise and not the hare. What I mean by that is it would be better to spend a little bit of time every day working on all of your subjects and getting through them and slowly building one thing on another than to be frenetic about it and, not do any school for 3 days because you're just running the kids all around or you just don't feel like it or whatever. And then make your kids do 3 math lessons in one day and try to cram in extra literature and, working like that. Think of it as slow and steady wins the race, but really the most important part of homeschooling is to just be consistent. Be consistent. Don't pack your schedule too full. Do really well in the things that really, really matter, which would be Bible, math. In our house, it's Latin also, and composition. The math and the composition, are really important, that they start when they're young and build on those skills little by little instead of waiting and putting it off until they're in middle school or even high school and then try to cram everything in. It's much better to work at it a little bit at a time, to be consistent in your efforts, and just help the kids understand Monday through Friday is for schoolwork, or Monday through Thursday. Some people do a 4-day schedule, and that's great too. But the important thing is to be consistent, and so that your kids know that during the week we are doing school, This is what we're doing. This is what is expected of you. If you are consistent in your expectations of your children, they are going to have a much easier time meeting those expectations. If they know what the expectations are and mom is self-disciplined and, mom is being a good example to them, then, like a family of little tortoises, you will be able to inch towards the finish line of graduating a well-rounded, educated student. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions or if you have any tips of your own for homeschooling, multiple students and not losing your ever-loving mind, then please leave them below. I would love to hear them. I'm always trying to get better at what I'm doing, so I would love to hear your own tips. And I hope you'll join me next time. Thanks. Bye.